time's malevolent gift. This is the third and final part of this story. Before we start, if you enjoy my content and want to support me, please feel free to like this video and subscribe. I hung up on my girlfriend and immediately blocked her on everything. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed without changing my clothes. I grabbed the pendant around my neck, wondering if this strange piece of jewellery with the sun and the moon design had anything to do with the day's bizarre events. What had the old creepy looking shopkeeper said? That this pendant gave powers or something related to strategy? I don't even think he knew what he was talking about. He probably didn't even know if it gave the user powers or not. That little story might help add some charm to the merchandise or something. Closing my eyes, I fell into a fitful sleep, uncertain of what tomorrow would bring. When I woke up, the first thing I did wasn't to turn off my phone's alarm, but to check my clothes. To my relief, I was still wearing the same clothes I had fallen asleep in. It felt strange to think of yesterday as yesterday, given that it was a repetition of the day prior. And it was even stranger that this phenomenon had apparently only happened to me. To be absolutely sure I wasn't repeating the same day again, I grabbed my phone and felt a wave of relief wash over me as I saw Tuesday flashing on the phone screen. I continued my day normally. Work, college. Everything seemed unusually calm. That was until I got a call from an unknown number, which ruined it all. It was my ex calling from a different number. She was clearly drunk, her speech slurred and incoherent. One moment she was cursing me, telling me how much time she wasted on me, and the next she was crying. Eventually I hung up and decided to take a shower before bed. However, I remembered the pendant I had bought from that strange shop. I got up again and put it around my neck, wanting to test something. When I woke up, I wasn't wearing the same clothes I had gone to bed in. I quickly grabbed my phone and saw Tuesday on the screen. I was reliving the same day again. I followed my routine and everything happened exactly the same way at work and at college. With this advantage, I made sure to avoid some of the mistakes I had made the previous day. When I returned to my apartment, my phone rang. Already knowing it would be my drunken ex calling me from another number, I quickly blocked it and went to watch TV. It felt liberating to escape the drama and simply relax. As I sat on the couch, a sense of control washed over me. The bizarre experience of reliving the same day provided me with a unique opportunity. I could refine my actions, correct my mistakes, and navigate my life with an uncanny foreknowledge. Now I was beginning to understand why this pendant granted its wearer strategic powers. I woke up the next morning. I grabbed my phone to check the date. And there it was, Wednesday. Apparently, I could only repeat the yesterday once, one shot to get things right. I decided to test the powers of this pendant, so I went about my routine normally. That night, I went to sleep without the pendant to see if strange events were connected to it. When I woke up and checked my phone, it read Thursday. I quickly understood how the pendant worked. From then on, I slept with the pendant every night, using my newfound ability to hack life avoiding mistakes and embarrassing moments. My boss began to praise me for my innate ability to handle rude customers and deal with unexpected situations. If only he knew, but that was my secret and mine alone. Once, some robbers attempted to hold up the supermarket. My boss and the other employees were terrified. I had to pretend to be scared too, but once I got back to my apartment, I couldn't stop smiling as I planned to prevent this event when today repeated itself tomorrow. I knew the exact time the robbers would strike, so it was easy to excuse myself to the bathroom and call the police just before the robbery was supposed to happen. It was like I was invincible. This ability to relive yesterday once more also greatly helped my studies. Being able to attend the same class twice was a huge advantage. Not to mention being able to relax during the weekend twice as much. When the most dreaded day of every student arrived, exam day, I didn't feel nervous. I didn't panic when I encountered questions I couldn't answer. I just memorized as many questions as I could, looked up the answers, and slept with a pendant around my neck to relive the day and retake the exam. This time, knowing how to answer the previous questions. I wondered to myself what else I could do with this ability to relive the day once more, and then new ideas started to emerge. I had always been someone who had to work hard and sweat to have nice things in life, always on the verge of losing everything, counting coins at the end of the month. So I decided to be selfish and greedy. Now that I had a huge advantage in my hands, or rather around my neck, I was going to grab this advantage and make the most of it. Beyond just avoiding the mistakes made during the day, I began to enjoy life the way I've always wanted. I went to the cinema, bowling alleys, karaoke bars, and restaurants. I spent the money I didn't have, but I wasn't worried because all I had to do was sleep with a pendant to relive the day again and avoid spending anything, keeping my money intact. For a moment, guilt washed over me as I questioned whether I should be taking advantage of this pendant. Was it wrong to indulge myself while others struggled? But then I reminded myself that everyone enjoyed life in their own way, and I wasn't hurting anyone in the process. After all, I was simply seizing an opportunity that had been gifted to me, making the most of what I had. This superpower turned every moment into a strategic advantage. I can be selfish, and that's okay. I started using this ability to commit small thefts too. I mentally noted where my boss and colleagues were distracted, and when the day repeated, I took advantage of those exact moments to steal some products from the supermarket. I had worked there long enough to know the blind spots of the cameras, and I also knew that this supermarket's cash flow was rather sloppy. I also started applying the same trick at college. The classrooms didn't have cameras, making it easy for me to slip my hand in someone's backpack when I knew the perfect moment when no one would notice. I knew what I was doing was wrong, so I always made sure it was just small things and that I didn't raise too much suspicion. During a break at college, I went into the men's room with a triumphant smile. I had managed to steal some coins from a classmate's bag when I knew the exact moment was right. Just enough to buy a can of soda from the vending machine. I tossed the empty can in the trash and splashed some water in my face. However, when I looked in the mirror again, I saw something that startled me. And it wasn't just my reflection staring back at me, but also a deer. I quickly turned around but saw nothing. I was alone in the restroom. I turned back to the mirror, and everything seemed more normal again. Shaking off the unsettling vision, I headed back to my apartment. After taking a long shower and eating some instant noodles I had swiped from work, I crashed into bed with a pendant featuring the sun and moon still around my neck. I knew wearing it tonight was pointless. The day could only be repeated once. What happened today was set in stone, but the pendant had become part of me now. It was a strange comfort. The next morning, I woke up feeling off. My sleep had been disturbed by bizarre dreams of Native Americans and a haunting deer with dark, piercing eyes and metallic antlers. No matter where I ran in the dream, the deer always found me. Brushing off the unease, I decided to take the day for myself. I sent my boss a half-baked excuse for why I couldn't come into work and skipped college entirely. I splurged on expensive clothes, I rented a luxury car and dined at a high-end Japanese restaurant, visited a strip club and bought premium alcohol, reveling in the freedom and excess as if it were my last day on earth. Later that night, I returned to my apartment, the pendant still around my neck, and fell asleep. The alarm blared, and I silenced it with a groggy swipe. Checking my phone, I saw the date had reset. Tuesday again. Satisfied, I knew it was about time to undo the extravagant day I had just lived. Now it was back to my mundane routine, avoiding all the reckless spending and indulgences. Work was tediously slow. Minutes felt like hours, and as I went through the motions, just as my shift was about to end, my boss asked for help with some heavy boxes. If the pendant allowed me to relive the day multiple times, I would have told him to leave me alone and left. But, knowing its limits, I forced myself to be diligent and a hard-working employee, the one he expected. Because of this, I missed my usual bus and had to walk to college. Turning a corner, I was startled by an elderly woman who seemed to appear out of nowhere. She had a deeply lined face, tattered cloak, and numerous handmade trinkets and feathers woven into her grey hair. Her grip was surprisingly strong as she seized my arm, stopping me in my tracks. The street around us was eerily empty. She spoke in a raspy voice, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made me uneasy. "You must be careful," she warned. I yanked my arm free, glaring at her. "Get away from me, you crazy woman!" Ignoring my insult, she continued in a strange, enigmatic tone. "The forces that forged this gift are the same that deal with those who misuse it." Just leave me alone," I shouted, stepping back. I stumbled over the curb, but managed to keep my balance. When I looked back, the old woman had vanished without a trace. Shaken, I hurried to college, her cryptic words echoing in my mind. The rest of the day felt surreal, and by the time I got home, I was more exhausted than ever. I lay on my bed scrolling through my phone when an ad for a betting site held my attention. A smile crept across my face. I had never dared to gamble before. As someone who has always been scraping by, I kept my distance from such things, afraid of losing everything. But now, with this pendant around my neck, I had nothing to fear. The next few days were the best of my life. I had a blast and made a fortune using the advantage of reliving the day once more. I found a few betting sites that the internet claimed were reliable and placed several sports bets. I didn't care if I lost and nearly emptied my bank account. I just needed to sleep to relive the day and bet on the team I predicted would win. I also discovered other ways to make money using the pendant's advantage, like day trading and stocks. I had never had so much money in my life and no longer needed to look for odd jobs like dog walking. I have the world at my fingertips. As I walked down the college hallway, carrying my backpack over one shoulder and checking the betting sites on my phone, I reflected a bit on my life. Since childhood, I had never really been able to be a child. The worry about not having enough money to pay bills and buy necessities always weighed on my shoulders. I had worked pretty hard my entire life, but it never seemed to be enough. Now, this mysterious pendant, I could prosper on a much easier path. I was already starting to reconsider working at the supermarket and going to college. Just as I had expected, the team I bet on won, and my money tripled. In just a few hours, I earned far more than I did working a month at that dead-end supermarket. I pocketed my phone with a victorious smile, but suddenly froze when I saw the scene before me. At the end of the hallway stood a deer, larger than usual, with dark eyes and again metallic antlers adorned with feathers. It walked gracefully among the gathering. The students passed by the enormous creature, completely ignoring it. It was as if no one else could see it. In fact, they probably couldn't. It was only visible to me. The creature's hooves clacked against the floor, echoing through the corridor. The deer stopped and fixed its gaze on me. A wave of terror surged through my body. I turned on my heel and ran, weaving through confused people. I made it back to my apartment in a record time. The familiar comfort of my safe haven provided me with some solace, but it wasn't enough. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, watching TV, and taking a shower, but nothing could erase the image of that deer in the hallway. What was that deer? I tried to ignore the incident, convincing myself it was a one-time occurrence. Days passed, and I hope it was the end of it. But soon, the sound of hooves began to follow me. Just like in my dreams, no matter where I went, I couldn't escape the deer. From time to time, I would see its reflection in any reflective surface, and occasionally I would catch a glimpse of the massive creature passing by. But, as in the college hallway, the deer was only visible to me. At the supermarket, I was stacking some canned goods on a shelf in one of the aisles when I froze at the familiar sound of hooves echoing. I could see through the shelf to the top side of the aisle, and there it was. The deer walked slowly on the other side. This was the closest it had ever been. Suddenly, a hand landed on my shoulder, startling me. It was my co-worker, Mike. "Hey, You okay? Mike asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Yeah, I'm fine, I replied quickly, forcing a smile. Are you sure? You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, not entirely convinced. I'm just not feeling well, I lied, hoping he would buy it. Mike studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, take it easy. He walked away, and I peered through the shelf again, but the deer was nowhere to be found. The rest of the day was a blur. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see those dark eyes and metallic antlers staring back at me. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, exhausted from work and unable to concentrate in class with everything that was happening. The weight of the day pressed heavily on my shoulders, and all I wanted was a sanctuary of my own space. As I reached into my pocket for my keys and approached my door, I heard the unmistakable sound of hooves scraping the ground behind me. My heart pounded as I turned slowly, dread filling me. There it was, the creature. The deer scratched the ground a few more times with its hooves before lowering its head and aiming its formidable antlers right at me. The deer let out a roar and charged. How I managed to get the key into the lock, turn it, and slip inside my apartment before the deer reached me is still a mystery. I leaned against the door, using all my strength to keep the creature out. Its razor-sharp antlers pierced through the door, nearly impaling me. The deer rammed the door repeatedly. Each impact reverberated through the wood and into my bones, accompanied by the guttural sound of an enraged animal. Eventually, everything went silent. No more sounds of hooves or angry bellows. After almost an hour of leaning against the door, I cautiously peeked through the holes the deer's antlers had punched into the door. Only an empty corridor stared back at me. I slumped to the floor, my body shaken with exhaustion and fear. What was happening to me? Why was this deer haunting me? The following morning, my landlord, visibly irritated, came to speak with me. He had received complaints from neighbours about the noise late at night and was even more incensed upon seeing the holes in my apartment door. He demanded that I pay for the damages, which I quickly agreed to. It was easier to comply than to try explaining that a demonic deer with metallic antlers, visible only to me, had tried to kill me the previous night. I went through my day as usual, working at the supermarket and then attending classes at college. All the while, I kept glancing over my shoulder, making sure the hellish deer wasn't following me. The constant anxiety wore me down, but I managed to get through my responsibilities without incident. When I returned to my apartment that evening, I made a decision. I would sleep without the pendant tonight. I didn't want to relive this stressful day and endure another confrontation with the landlord. Today was a holiday, meaning no work and no classes. The deer seemed to have finally ceased its pursuit. I hadn't seen it in some time. It was night and I was walking down the street, phone in hand, watching my money grow. Day trading had proven to be much faster and more lucrative than sports betting and buying stocks. With the pendant allowing me to relive the holiday once more, I knew the exact moments the market would rise and fall, making precise decisions and earning substantial profits. After a series of successful trades, one after the other, I invested more and more money. I was determined to quit my job and drop out of college. I didn't need them anymore. I envisioned building an empire with people working for me, while I never had to come home so exhausted that I could barely change clothes, let alone worry about my future. Success was within my grasp, and it's not something that many people can say. I paused my nightly walk to sit on the curb, still fixating my phone. A stray dog wandered by and then began barking in a specific direction. Out of the blue, the ordinary bark turned into fierce, guttural growls, holding my attention. The dog's fur stood on end as it bared its teeth at something hidden in the dense vegetation behind me. Alarmed, I stood up from the curb and pocketed my phone. My blood ran cold as I heard the sounds I wished to never hear again. The clattering of hooves approaching. The once brave-minded dog whimpered and ran away, tail between its legs. The dim streetlight revealed the massive deer emerging from the bushes, the feather tied to its antler swaying gently in the breeze. No, not this, not again. I bolted down the deserted street, screaming for help, the hoofbeats echoing behind me. Desperate, I crawled under a nearby parked van, the only place I could find that seemed remotely safe. The deer rammed into the van, shattering glass with a loud crash. It snorted angrily, attacking the vehicle from all sides. My heart pounded against the hard asphalt as I watched its legs pacing around the van, occasionally charging it with its antlers or front hooves. Then I remembered my phone. I fumbled for it, intending to call the police. But just as I was about to dial, an angry voice rang out. "What happened to my car?" yelled a man, his voice full of outrage. "What?" I whispered to myself. I looked around, but the deer was gone, just like in the supermarket aisle. I crawled out from under the van. The angry man approached me, demanding to know what had happened, what those marks on his car were. Unable to take any more, I ran. The man shouted for me to wait, but I ignored him. Breathless, I ran through the streets, not knowing where to go. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I found myself back at my apartment, panting and drenched in sweat. I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the floor, the events of the night replaying in my mind. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but once again I dreamt of the deer relentlessly chasing me. This time, however, it was different. I was sprinting through dense vegetation, the furious clatter of the deer's hooves echoing ominously behind me. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a Native American tent, surrounded by a group of indigenous people gathered around a fire. One of them, an older woman, looked at me and approached. She wore a necklace with a pendant of the sun and the moon. "You must be careful," she said. "The forces that forged this gift are the same that will deal with those who misuse it." I quickly recognized her as the same old woman who had grabbed my arm. I woke up, drenched in a cold sweat. Leaping out of bed and tossing the covers aside, my fingers found the pendant around my neck, and with a resolute tug, I tore it off. The morning air was chilly, and the sky was a blanket of grey clouds. The dock lay deserted. I walked to its edge and gazed at the water. Taking the necklace from my coat pocket, I gave it one final look before throwing it into the sea. For a few moments I stood there, absorbing the peaceful scenery. As I turned to leave, my heart nearly stopped. I saw the deer standing at the dock's entrance. I was trapped. If the deer decided to charge, I had nowhere to run. But, to my surprise, the deer walked calmly to the edge of the dock and leapt into the water. There was no sound of a splash. I approached the spot where it had jumped, but saw nothing but the calm sea. I stood there, perplexed, staring at the water, trying to understand what had just happened. Everything was calm, as if the deer had never existed. The cold wind blew, bringing with it a sense of relief and closure. With a deep sigh, I stepped away from the railing and began walking back home. For the first time in a few weeks, I felt light, free from the fear that had haunted me. The deer seemed to have vanished, taking with it all the terror that it had brought.